Disturbing social media posts from the man deputies accused of killing his mother, cousin, and another woman Monday night.
It began with a quiet Florida night, the kind where even the streetlights seemed tired. A lonely road, a silver sedan cutting through the darkness, and a man behind the wheel who looked calm, too calm. His name was Javante Bryce. At 28, he was a son, a cousin, a friend, but on this night, something inside him had fractured beyond recognition. What followed would leave 3 people dead, including his own mother, and a community in stunned disbelief, asking one question: why? Hours earlier, Javante had seemed restless. Neighbors recalled seeing him step outside his Bradenton apartment, pacing, phone in hand, mumbling to himself. To anyone watching, it looked like a man trying to shake off frustration. Maybe a breakup, maybe money problems, nothing too out of the ordinary. But as the night stretched on, that unease hardened into purpose. He began to drive. No one knew where he was going, not even the people closest to him. His mother, Tidamisha Scott, had spoken to him earlier that day. She was worried. "Just come by, let's talk," she had said. She'd always been the peacemaker, the one who could calm her son when anger got the best of him. She'd seen him through the dark times, the job losses, the arguments, even the moments when he seemed detached from reality. But this time, there would be no talking him down. At 9:17 p.m., cameras at a Motel 6 in Bradenton caught the silver car pulling in. Inside, Tidamisha was waiting. What happened next was so sudden, even the witnesses nearby couldn't process it. They heard raised voices, a few words muffled by walls, then 3 quick shots. By the time police arrived, the room was silent. The shooter was gone. Within 20 minutes, the same car appeared again, this time near 26th Street Court East. His cousin, Sequoia Bryce, sat in her car, unaware of the danger closing in. She was someone who had always believed in second chances, always defending her family no matter what. When she saw Javante step out of his car, she might have thought he needed help, maybe just wanted to talk. But before she could even open her door, gunfire erupted again. The reports came in fast: 2 locations, 2 victims, 1 name, Javante Bryce. As word spread through Manatee County, phones began to ring. Friends tried to reach him, family members begged him to stop. Deputies scrambled to track his movements. But by 10:04 p.m., he was already at a home in Bradenton, where another confrontation unfolded, this time involving an ex-girlfriend and her new partner. The man was shot and killed. In less than an hour, Javante had turned Florida's west coast into a trail of grief. 3 lives gone. Several others shattered. And he was still on the move. Around midnight, highway cameras picked up his vehicle heading north on Interstate 75, crossing county lines, past exits and gas stations, as if running from ghosts he couldn't escape. Patrol cars were alerted. A statewide manhunt went out. By the time officers in Hamilton County spotted him near the Georgia border, the story had already broken online. Newsrooms called it a family tragedy. But that phrase didn't begin to cover it. Moments later, the chase ended in gunfire. When the smoke cleared, Javante Bryce was dead. By dawn, the headlines read like something out of a nightmare: "Son kills mother, cousin, and another in violent Florida rampage before dying in shootout." For those who knew him, the disbelief was unbearable. How could the same man who used to laugh at backyard cookouts, who once talked about turning his life around, commit something so horrific? That night didn't just end 3 lives. It ripped open a wound that stretched far beyond the families involved. It became a mirror for something deeper, about anger left unchecked, about the silent battles too many people carry alone, and how quickly love can turn into loss when help never comes in time. This is the story of Javante Bryce, and the night Florida will never forget. Before that tragic night, Javante Bryce was known around Bradenton as a man who carried quiet storms inside him. To the casual eye, he was just another young man trying to get by, working when he could, staying close to family, trying to find his place in a world that often felt too heavy. Those who knew him best said he had a heart that could be both soft and fierce. He loved hard, protected fiercely, and sometimes, when his emotions overwhelmed him, he shut down completely. Born and raised in Manatee County, Javanti's life was intertwined with his family's roots. His mother, Titamisha T. Scott, was the foundation of that family. Strong, loving, and deeply spiritual, she raised her children to believe in second chances. Friends described her as the one everyone called when things went bad. She worked hard to keep her family close, even when life pulled them in different directions. Growing up, Javanti was the quiet one, observant, loyal, but prone to deep moods that sometimes worried his mother. After high school, he bounced between jobs and tried to build stability. But life, as it often does, tested him. He struggled with finding long-term work. He had relationships that started with promise but ended with tension. Still, through it all, his mother was there, checking in, reminding him that family was everything. By his late 20s, though, something began to change. Friends noticed him becoming more distant, less talkative. He wasn't coming around as much. He'd avoid calls, stay off social media for long stretches, then suddenly post messages that hinted at pain, heartbreak, betrayal, or frustration with people close to him. Those posts didn't alarm many at the time. Everyone assumed he'd bounce back like he always did. But under the surface, the cracks were deepening. His relationship with one of his ex-partners had been turbulent. They shared history and at times hope. But there were also heated arguments, jealousy, trust issues, and words that cut deeper than they realized. When it finally ended, it wasn't clean. There were still lingering emotions, and in the weeks leading up to the incident, things reportedly grew tense. Friends said Javanti felt pushed out and misunderstood. Around that same time, his bond with his mother became strained. They loved each other, no doubt, but she had begun to confront him about his behavior, his temper, his choices, and the way he was isolating himself. She wanted him to seek help, to talk things out. He, on the other hand, felt cornered. To him, it seemed like the people he loved most didn't understand him anymore. Then came February 2024, the month everything began to spiral. In the days leading up to the tragedy, there were small signs that something was wrong. He wasn't sleeping well. He was seen sitting alone in his car late at night, parked near his cousin's home, engine idling for hours. He sent cryptic text messages to friends, short, fragmented thoughts about being done with it all. When people asked what he meant, he brushed it off. Titamisha, as always, tried to intervene. She called him that morning, asking him to come see her. "Let's talk," she said. "Whatever it is, we can fix it." Those would be some of her last words to him. Later that day, witnesses saw him driving through town, stopping at convenience stores but not speaking to anyone. It was as if he was searching for something, or maybe trying to silence the storm within. People who crossed paths with him said he looked blank. Not angry. Not sad. Just empty.
There's chilling details in a Manatee County killing spree leaving 3 people dead. You're watching 10 Tampa Bay. I'm Frank Wiley.
And I'm Carolina. Lead in tonight for Courtney. The Manatee County Sheriff's Office says the suspect was on his way to hurt more people in Georgia before getting into a shootout. Sheriff Rick Wells says this man, Javanti Bryce, first went to his sister's apartment where one of his ex-girlfriends was inside. However, his sister was able to talk him out of shooting anyone there. He then fled to a motel where his mother, her boyfriend, and 2 kids were staying.
He walked into that hotel room, looked at the mother and said, "I'm sorry." She asked, "What did you do?" And he shoots her 3 times.
And this map right here showing the locations of all 3 shootings. The sheriff's office says Bryce drove toward Georgia and Highland County deputies engaged in a shootout with him. 10 Tampa Bay's Aduri Achumba joining us live now in Manatee County. Aduri, a horrible situation.
Indeed, Frank, it is. And tonight, authorities are telling us that they are yet to release the names of the 3 victims in the shooting spree. But they do say that that before 28-year-old Javanti Bryce fired his first shots right here at the Motel 6 behind me, that he had planned to target other people.
It sounded like gunshots. So my husband went out to investigate what was going on. and that's when we heard the commotion from the ladies upstairs.
Guests in the neighboring rooms at the Motel 6 disturbed by the scene that unfolded Monday night. Manatee County Sheriff says the shooter, 28-year-old Javante Bryce, fired several shots at his mother.
Her daughter, I don't know which one it was. Someone please help. Please help me. You know, my mom just got shot. So I told my son to grab some towels. Give me some towels, and I ran up there.
I'm like, oh my God, is the baby okay? Because she was holding a baby when she got shot. They say that he came flying in here in a vehicle and did what he did and left in the vehicle.
Authorities say he then went to a home on 26th Street in Palmetto where he shot his cousin who had just celebrated a birthday as she was leaving a cookout.
There, the police showed up. They saw the body in front of the garage there in the driveway.
Investigators say Bryce's next deadly stop, his ex-girlfriend and co-parents' home on 51st Street.
He does not shoot or kill the girlfriend, but he shoots and kills the new partner.
Authorities put out a bolo on his car, which was intercepted in Hamilton County near the Georgia state line. They say Bryce was heading to another ex's home to kill her too.
He immediately gets out of the car and starts firing upon them. They return fire, shooting and killing him there in Hamilton County. And that's where everything ends.
Before the shootings began, investigators say Bryce stopped at another location.
When he walked into the apartment, he looked at the ex-girlfriend and said, "I have to kill you." Somehow, the sister was able to talk him down and talk him out of him shooting this ex-girlfriend.
And as you heard, Sheriff Wells there, Javante Bryce died in that gunfire exchange with deputies at the Georgia state line. Now, tonight, investigators say they are interviewing a woman who was in the car with Bryce throughout this entire shooting spree, and they're trying to get any insight into a motive. They're also trying to determine if she was another victim or if she was an accomplice. Now, they are also looking into several social media posts that Bryce made about the people he targeted before the shooting began.
He wasn't a monster. That's what makes stories like this so devastating. He was a man caught in a whirlwind of confusion, heartbreak, and emotional pain, but without the tools to face it. Mental health struggles often hide behind quiet faces. Javante's friends and family would later say that if they'd known how bad things were, they would have done anything to stop it. But no one saw the full picture. On the outside, life went on as usual that day. Kids played in the neighborhood. Cars hummed along US 301. And somewhere in Bradenton, a mother waited, hoping her son would show up at her door so they could talk things out one more time. That evening, as the sun dipped below the Florida horizon, the air felt heavy. A soft rain began to fall, streaking across the windshield of Javante's car as he drove. Maybe he was lost in thought. Maybe he was angry. Maybe he was just tired of it all. By the time he reached the Motel 6, night had fully settled. The parking lot was quiet, the hum of the nearby highway the only sound. Inside, Tidamisha waited. Perhaps she believed this meeting would be the breakthrough, the moment her son would finally open up. But instead, it became the point of no return. In the hours that followed, Javante's world, and everyone connected to him, would collapse in a wave of irreversible tragedy. It's easy to look back and say the signs were there. The late-night drives. The isolation. The silent cries for help buried beneath casual conversations. But hindsight always feels clearer than the present. In truth, no one expected the man they loved to become the headline of a story that would break hearts across Florida. Before that night, he was just Javante, a man trying to navigate life, love, and pain. A man who, somewhere along the line, lost sight of hope. And for those who knew him, the hardest part wasn't just the tragedy itself. It was realizing that the person they thought they could always reach had slipped too far into the shadows to be pulled back. What began as a simple attempt to make peace would soon spiral into one of the most haunting family tragedies Florida had seen in years. And when the truth finally surfaced, it would raise more questions than it answered. About love, anger, and the thin line that sometimes separates the two. The next morning, the news rippled through Bradenton like an emotional aftershock no one saw coming. A quiet motel. A sudden, violent act. A mother and son, gone within minutes. Police tape fluttered in the soft Florida breeze as detectives and first responders worked the scene at the Motel 6 on Cortez Road. The bright blue and red lights cast an eerie glow against the beige walls, illuminating a tragedy that words could barely contain. Inside, they found Tidamisha T.T. Scott, 48 years old, and her son Javante Bryce, both lifeless. What had unfolded between those walls was a brief, heart-stopping moment of pain, a moment that would leave an entire family forever broken. To the detectives, the scene told a story of heartbreak and despair. The physical evidence was clear, but emotionally, it was impossible to grasp. A mother who had devoted her life to raising her children, gone at the hands of the very son she fought hardest to save. As the investigation began, police pieced together the final hours before the tragedy. Surveillance footage showed Javante's car entering the motel parking lot late in the evening. He walked in calmly, checked in under his name, and paid for the room. A few hours later, his mother arrived. She was composed, even hopeful. She'd told a friend earlier that she was going to help her son through something. But sometime after that, the tone shifted. Neighbors in nearby rooms reported hearing muffled voices, then raised tones, not shouting, but urgent, emotional. Like two people caught in a moment of truth that neither could escape. Moments later, silence. When police arrived at the scene, it was already too late. The Manatee County Sheriff's Office confirmed what no one wanted to believe. It was an apparent murder-suicide, committed by Javante. He had taken his mother's life and then his own. A sentence so brief, yet so heavy, it sent shockwaves through the entire community. Friends and family were stunned. How could a son so devoted to his mother, who often posted photos of her with captions like, "My rock," and "She's all I've got," reach such a devastating breaking point? As detectives traced Javante's recent history, a complex picture began to form. In the weeks before the tragedy, Javante's mental health had been declining. Friends described him as withdrawn and restless. He had lost his job. A romantic relationship had ended painfully. And, perhaps most concerning, he had begun expressing hopelessness, a sense that he had failed everyone. But the people around him didn't see how serious it was. He masked it behind smiles, humor, and short text replies that downplayed his pain. His mother, Tidamisha, had been trying to intervene. Family members said she'd been encouraging him to get counseling, maybe even move back home for a while until he got back on his feet. But pride and pain can be a dangerous mix. Police interviews later revealed that earlier that week, there had been a heated exchange between the two. It wasn't the first time, but this time, it seemed to strike deeper. Javante reportedly felt misunderstood, as if the world, and even his own family, saw him only through the lens of his mistakes. The night of the tragedy, he asked his mother to meet him at the motel. He told her he wanted to talk privately. She went, not because she was afraid, but because that was who she was. A mother who believed her love could reach even the darkest corners of her son's heart. When investigators opened their case file, they didn't just find crime scene photos. They found a heartbreaking paper trail of desperation. Old text messages. Deleted posts. A journal entry saved on his phone where he wrote, "I can't keep hurting people I love. I just want peace." The discovery gutted everyone who read it. This wasn't just a story about violence. It was a story about emotional implosion, about what happens when pain goes unspoken for too long. As the details surfaced, the community gathered for a vigil. Candles lined the edge of the motel parking lot, the same place where tragedy had unfolded just days earlier. Family members stood together, holding each other up as they spoke through tears. One of Tidamisha's friends said softly, "She died doing what she always did, trying to help." And that's what made the pain unbearable. Because for those who knew her, that's exactly who she was. She was the mother who showed up. The mother who never gave up. For Javante's siblings, the emotions were impossible to navigate. They loved their brother deeply. They were angry, broken, confused, and yet they still mourned him. In one moment, they had lost two people. As the days passed, the story spread beyond Bradenton. News outlets covered it, social media shared it, and comments poured in. Strangers expressed sympathy, while others struggled to understand. Some blamed mental health, others blamed stress, and some simply said it was a reminder of how fragile the human spirit can be. The investigation, though mostly straightforward, revealed one chilling truth: there were warning signs. Friends recalled how Javante had distanced himself from everyone, how he'd begun to talk about feeling like a burden. He had hinted at dark thoughts but quickly brushed them aside. And in that silence, that unwillingness to fully open up, the tragedy took root. In one of his final social media posts, made weeks before the incident, Javante had written, "Sometimes love hurts in ways you can't explain." It didn't alarm anyone then. But now, in hindsight, it felt like a quiet scream no one heard in time. Detectives closed the case within weeks, labeling it a domestic-related murder-suicide. There was no outside involvement. No third party. Just a mother and son, two people bound by love, torn apart by despair. But the emotional aftermath was far from over. In Bradenton, grief turned to introspection. Pastors spoke about the importance of mental health in their Sunday sermons. Community centers began hosting open sessions on coping with depression and anger. For many, it was too late to help Javante, but maybe, just maybe, someone else could be saved. At the heart of it all was the painful question that haunted everyone who knew them: could this have been stopped? Maybe if he had talked more openly. Maybe if his mother had recognized how deep the darkness went. Maybe if someone had picked up on the unspoken cries for help. But those maybes could never change what had already happened. By now, the motel had cleaned the room, the tape was gone, and the parking lot looked ordinary again. But for the people who passed by it every day, it would never be just another motel. It would always be the place where love and pain collided, a silent monument to the unseen battles that people carry inside. And for those closest to the family, the conflict wasn't over. It had shifted inward, into their hearts, their prayers, and their attempts to make sense of something senseless. It wasn't just a case file anymore. It was a reminder, a lesson that even the strongest love can't always save someone from their own storm unless they're willing to reach back. And as investigators packed away the final reports, Bradenton quietly mourned, not just for the loss of 2 lives, but for the countless others walking around with invisible pain, hoping someone will notice before it's too late. It was a quiet Sunday morning in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, when the news broke: a young mother, Jamia Harris, was gone. The streets around Grace Street filled with flashing lights, police tape, and confused faces. People whispered her name with disbelief, as if saying it too many times would make it real. She wasn't supposed to die like this. Not here. Not this way. Jamia was only 23 years old. A mother, a friend, a woman whose laughter was known to brighten even the dullest room. That night, she had simply gone out with friends, trying to enjoy a break from her daily responsibilities, a rare night to feel free. But before sunrise, her life was stolen in a burst of senseless violence. A gun fired into a car, a moment of chaos that changed everything. Her family said she had been planning her next steps in life, dreaming of a stable future for her son, Kane. She wasn't perfect, but she was determined. People who knew her described her as loyal, protective, and full of energy. To them, she was the kind of person who never left you guessing about how she felt. She said what was on her mind and meant every word. When her mother, DeCarla Hurd, got the call, she dropped everything and rushed to the scene. She didn't yet know what had happened, only that her daughter's name was being mentioned among police chatter. But when she arrived, reality came crashing down. The car was surrounded by officers, and Jamia was gone. The story spread fast. Local news outlets first reported a fatal shooting near the Strip, a busy area filled with college bars, restaurants, and students from the University of Alabama. But what made this tragedy explode beyond Alabama was the shocking twist that soon followed. One of the people involved in the shooting was connected to the university's men's basketball team, one of the best in the nation. In the hours that followed, investigators began piecing together what had happened. It started with a night out, too much alcohol, too many emotions, and an argument that spiraled into violence. The shooter, Michael "Buzz" Davis, was accused of firing the fatal shots, but it was revealed that the gun used in the killing allegedly belonged to Brandon Miller, one of Alabama's star basketball players, who had brought it to the scene at Davis's request. When that detail emerged, the story became national news. Not only because a young woman had been killed, but because her death was now entangled with fame, privilege, and the ethics of college sports. Jamia's family didn't care about the headlines. They didn't care about basketball rankings or tournament implications. All they cared about was that their daughter, their sister, their mother, was never coming home again. In the following days, the university and the athletic department came under fire. People questioned why Miller was still allowed to play when his connection to the case was clear. Supporters defended him, saying he didn't pull the trigger. Others demanded accountability, insisting that morality should outweigh talent. For Jamia's family, it all felt like the world was moving on while they were still stuck in the moment she took her last breath. They had to watch news clips of people debating her death as if it were just another sports controversy. To them, it wasn't about fame or headlines. It was about a life cut short and a little boy who would grow up without his mother. Her cousin later said in an interview, "People keep saying it was an accident or that he didn't mean to do it. But none of that matters. She's gone. And she's not coming back." The community grieved. Candlelight vigils were held. Friends and strangers gathered holding pictures of Jamia and her son. Her name became a rallying cry for those demanding justice, not only for her but for all victims of senseless violence. In the days that followed, the case continued to evolve. Statements were released, lawyers spoke, and the investigation revealed more about that tragic night. But beneath every headline, beneath every update, was a single heartbreaking truth. A young mother was dead, and a child's world would never be the same. As the cameras faded and the reporters moved on to the next story, those who loved Jamia were left behind with a silence that no one could fill. They remembered her not as the woman in the news but as the woman who sang while cooking, who laughed too loud, who loved her son more than anything in the world. And that's where this story truly lives, not in the court filings or the press conferences, but in the hearts of those who knew her. A mother, a daughter, a friend, gone too soon because one moment of recklessness changed everything forever. If you or someone you know is struggling to control anger or is caught in a violent situation, please reach out for help. One choice, 1 second, can destroy countless lives. Like this video. Share her story. Remember Jamia Harris. Because her name deserves to be spoken, not as a headline, but as a reminder of how fragile life truly is.